Sunday Night with me, Art and architecture have long served as mirrors of the environment or the communities and cultures from which they spring. Today, we're going to be having a conversation with a celebrated visionary architect and a much sought after artist. Victor Butler has been painting since he was 19. As a self-taught artist, he's had his paintings and his work showcased in Canada, in the United States, France, and across Africa. Hussein Fakhry is a household name in Ghana for the exemplary work and iconic designs of his portfolio, spanning private properties to high-rise edifices. Iconic, I must add. You're welcome to Sunday Night.
Thank you.
Now, I want to start with you, Victor. At 19, you started painting, something you learned largely by yourself. Where did the inspiration come from?
Well, the best way I can describe this is my talent was unearthed when I was about 4 years old, and my parents were asked to, as much as possible, nurture it. But I was more interested in the sciences and mathematics. So I went through focusing more on that than on art. But after my A-levels, I began to realize that with the option of going outside the country to study, I was going to lose my, let me say, Ghanaianness. And I started looking at my talent and decided I would like to, I had a lot to say verbally and a lot to say visually. So I made a decision, had my first exhibition at the age of 23 at the British Council. And after that, yes, I'll say it's all history now.
That's right. Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, you've had quite successful exhibitions around the world. I think the most recent one was something you did with the Nubuke Foundation,
yes.
Which took a catalogue of perspectives of
yes.
the stuff that you've done in the
yes.
past.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
It was very good. It was a retrospective, because next year marks 40 years since my first exhibition.
Wow.
And I thought it was a good opportunity to relive the past and invite more people to see my work. It went very well. It's one of a series I'm working on. The series is called Nuance. And I had the first exhibition under Nuance called The Whisperings of the Soul in Lagos, 2018. Mm-hmm. And the one at Nubuke was the second, but part one of the second, which was called Heart Sensing. Hopefully I'll do the second part, which is Heart Lines. But this has come in between my exhibition with Hussein.
Art on Art.
Art on Art has come in between. Okay. But I'm still working under that theme of Nuance.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now, Hussein, a journey from Beirut to Accra more than 2 decades ago saw you starting small, and just suddenly you've added to the skyline of our country. Was that the vision for you?
Of course. I mean, it was a vision since day one. It's a passion for me, as you know, architecture. It's not by accident that I became an architect. I loved it since I was a kid. And then I worked hard to develop it from the university till also work experience. And then God invited me to Ghana in 2003. And from that time, I was trying to find my way here. Mm-hmm. And I got attracted, and I got a lot of interest in the culture and then in the landscape. And I felt that more than a professional motive, I should be able to leave a touch, I mean, in the skyline of Accra and hopefully in Ghana. And this is what I'm working on. I mean, I did a little bit of work. Thank you for appreciating that. But I'm looking to be able to keep a good memory and be I mean, recognized at a certain time.
If what you've done so far is anything to go by, I can tell you that you're on your way to achieving exactly that. But this conversation is really about understanding where art and architecture intersects. Ghana is a developing country. Our skyline has evolved. We are a people of deep culture. Where do you see the interrelationship between your professional scope of work and Victor's?
Okay, and Shira, I think you can't come and say that I want to do architecture without a certain cultural and historical and artistic movement. Mm-hmm. So you can't separate art and culture from architecture and vice versa also. They come to complement each other, and they come as a result of each discipline. Mm-hmm. I think art and culture, they determine our communal mindset. Okay, what we are striving to do and to achieve. And then architecture comes to sum it up. I mean, because it adds to it science, it adds to it a little bit of technical, to build that physical environment which we have to live in, and we should be able to produce. So they are not at any time, anywhere disconnected. Okay, so architecture is a result of a mindset, is a result of a certain culture, is a result of a movement in a society. So you cannot separate it. So it's very interrelated. Mm-hmm. And the work of somebody like Victor is part of a good direction, to my opinion, mm-hmm. in the society, and which leads also to more thinking on cultural level, on intellectual level, and definitely can translate to good appreciation of architecture, of art, and of preserving the cultural values of the community and of the country.
Fantastic stuff. Rico, if you following on from Hussein's point, at what point do you see the nexus of architecture and art becoming a catalyst for development and for a nation's own identity?
Well, I think it all stems from one thing. Like Hussein was saying, it's important to have a good feeling about the culture mm-hmm. of a community. If we should limit our scope to Ghana, I'll say Ghana is a very culturally rich environment. Mm-hmm. As an artist, I'm not constrained by physical boundaries. So it's more of an esoteric approach to any concept. So I'll say that if a nation or a group of people or society, community, whatever way you want to call it, need security, that security comes from a clear understanding of your culture. Culture, in that sense, becomes your shelter. Mm. And that is where Hussein comes in. Mm-hmm. The the architectural environment literally or basically provides a shelter for each of us in all our endeavors. Mm-hmm. And culture is also the shelter under which we can be protected from external forces.
Wow, yeah. That's profound. And it leads me to ask, what about Hussein's work? Mm-hmm. Do you find the mindful similarities, or that grabs your attention, that gets you to say, I like what I see? And I would want you to also answer the same question.
Okay. Well, for me, one thing that we individually have and we share is an aesthetic. When you see Hussein's work on, either driving or walking around, there are certain elements about it that makes it stand out. Mm-hmm. And you ask yourself, why? I'll say that just like in a painting, mm-hmm. If you choose the right elements within a frame, you get something which is aesthetically pleasing. It shows that the person did put or attend to certain influences. What I like about Hussein's work is the simplicity and depth. I know that the conversation will continue along certain lines, mm-hmm. but if you view a painting, you view a building, everybody has their own reason to appreciate it. But if there is something about it that resonates with the environment, then I think it stands out as a piece of architecture.
Well, Hussein, how about you? Where do you find similarities between your work and Victor's work?
One thing that that is very important for me, or that I see clearly in the work of Victor, is the presence of the human face or aspect in the work. Mm. So every one of his painting, or most of it, you see that there is a face, there is a human touch, and then he tries to also brings out the inner side of the human to display it on the paintings. Mm-hmm. And then he has a lot of stories to tell you about every painting. Mm-hmm. And I think this aspect is very important. And I think this also can be done or can be duplicated in all disciplines. So we should always start from the human being, or from the human aspect in our work, and then end with the human aspect and at a human scale always. So this is one main aspect or view for the for Victor's work that I've been watching. And then another important aspect, I feel that the work of Victor is knowledge-based. Mm. So I see math in his work, I see also science, and I see also a lot of humanities. So, and for me, this is the base of any work that we would like it to be memorable. Mm-hmm. That you do proper calculations, proper, So, and this is what really in my work even I try to always apply. So when you see a nice elevation of a building, mm-hmm. It's math, it's artistic, but you can't put the artistic side without doing the proper calculations and measurements. And this is not me or Victor who invented it. I mean, every piece of art or every monument in the world throughout history has a certain scale and a certain calculation and certain work. So the two aspects, the human aspect and also the knowledge aspect in his work, that I appreciate, and I find a lot of similarities.
I'm very excited that you talk about the knowledge, because quite often it's easy to assume that art, whether it's expressed as designing a building or designing a piece of painting or a sculpture, or, I mean, we tend to easily forget that there's actually a lot of science in there, because we play heavily on the talent. But that said, where do you put the place of boundaries, for example? Boundaries being the rules. Because, of course, if you're designing a building, no matter how beautiful it is, I can't imagine that you would forego the rules of physics and structural engineering just because you want something to look good. So where do you place the importance of boundary in your line of work? I can see it a lot easily. But in Victor's line of work, I mean, a painting might, to the untrained eye, defy all rules. And I might still say, oh, that looks nice because maybe I like the colors. But how important are these elements to the work you do?
Okay, so, the artistic side is the first vision, or the first touch, or the first direction, okay? But then, in my understanding, but maybe Victor also can explain it more, on some of the artwork or some of the paintings, the sculptures, and so on. Let's say if you see in Victor's work, there's a lot of work on shadow and light, okay? If you don't have a clear knowledge about how the shadow and the light plays, I mean, you can put it on a painting, okay? You can put it, but it might be not in the right perspective. But knowledge and understanding of those elements makes you perfect it, okay? So proportions, let's say, proportions on a painting, same thing as a proportion on an elevation. If you are coming to do a certain painting or an elevation of a building, if you don't master, or you don't try to master, because nobody can master 100% anything, the rules of proportion, you might fall. And this is math, and this is geometry, and so on. So this is how it is. The colors, how to use the colors also, how to mix, I think there's a lot of details. The same way in architecture, how to blend materials and what fits with what, and what works with what, and the technicalities of those things also. So this is why a lot of times you see a building on, let's say, on a billboard, you say, wow, this is going to be nice. And then when you see the real building at the ground, you get disappointed, because that knowledge of
translating the art into the science,
is not really matured, So this is how I really see it.
I really like that. Victor, so, I mean, for you, what's your perspective? What's your take?
Well, interestingly, my grandfather was an architect and an artist.
Oh, wow.
Yes, Samuel Wood. Some of his work is like the Achimoto School, Kolebu Hospital, Sekandi Port, and a number of other buildings. And he was also a good artist and designer. My mother's siblings say I'm very much like him, and one of my aunts used to call me Dad. But that said, maybe it's just genetics. When it comes to appreciating architecture, I think from an artist's perspective, I would say that, yes, like you said, rules do apply. An artist has a liberty and latitude to do almost anything in the name of conceptual art, abstract art. But even within that, it should qualify as art. And you ask yourself, what qualifies an expression as art? I think if you can trace the inspiration or a philosophy, any expression will be art. But if you are trying to define what skill is, it's in the spectrum of art. It's needed to get the white light. you have to see that certain parameters work. And what I have used as my rules are a lot of our traditional art forms. And what has gone into textiles, carvings, casting, clay work. You find that our traditional artworks conform to a certain arrangement of line, color, form. But I'll say it's all encapsulated in symbolism. Like Hussein said earlier, he immersed himself in the culture, and that for me became his inspiration. It puts the parameters of being of the Ghanaian society in place. As an artist, I try to also limit myself, and use the word limit, to what I know I can refer to as the boundaries you were talking about. And that is to have a good and clear understanding of Ghanaian art, traditional art, even if it's craftsmanship, because some people say art and craft are different. But it still boils down to one thing, that African art in its entirety is functional art. Art that has a function. Buildings have a function. And anything that has a function also has to go according to certain parameters. So I'll say the similarity between art and architecture, I'll say that it's very interesting, because in architecture you can get the A, and R, and a T.
True.
In the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, you're watching Sunday Night, and for those of you on radio, you're listening to Sunday Night with me, Kweku Insua-Addo, and my guests today are celebrated icons and visionary artist Victor Butler and architect Hussein Fakhry. We're back after this short break. Welcome back to Sunday Night with me, Kweku Insua-Addo, and my two iconic and visionary guests. Hussein Fakhry is an architect, and Victor Butler is an artist. You're both in the spectrum of art, if I could call it that. And art, as Victor mentioned, starts with inspiration, not just talent. What's your creative process? How do you draw inspiration for your work?
Okay, in our field, in the architecture, the number one, inspiration is the context where you are working, where you are designing, for who you are designing, what are the parameters of the location, of the property, of the city, of the neighborhood. Okay, and then you start the process of the thinking, or of the first sketches from that. Okay, so if you are designing supposedly in the north of Ghana, you shouldn't have the same mindset or attributes as if you are designing in Accra. And if you are designing in Accra, it shouldn't be as if you are designing in on the beach, let's say in the central region. So every location has its particular parameters and conditions. Okay, this is in general, but then also when you come to the specific location, you analyze it further, and it gives you more inspiration and more ideas.
Wow.
So the surrounding built environment, the surrounding nature, the color of the landscape, the colors, okay, and then of course the weather and the cultural environment also is a major element, and a major drive in the design. Okay, this is what we call cultural imagination and contextual design and contextual architecture. Okay, this makes you love a certain architecture or find it, the other one as normal or as seen before. Okay. When you go into that process, also the building, even if it's a high rise, you still see it soft in the location. You don't get, because it's fitting well on the land. It's respecting a little bit the neighborhood. It has some natural elements in it, and also the cultural aspect comes. So it doesn't. So a building can be strange, and it can be, friendly, and it can be human, and so on. So this is for me. I mean,
that's yours.
Yeah.
In Victor's case, I wonder what that would be, because from Hussein's description, it's as though the context is the canvas on which the work is done. What's your inspiration or philosophy?
Well, I think context is a very good foundation. With my work, it will be more like I could have an idea about something, but by all means, it's influenced by another thing. And my process would be sometimes to take my sketchbook and put down initial sketches. Sometimes I will write something for myself about what I think is, is coming together.
Okay.
So for my work, sometimes it's just a thought. Sometimes it's just a play on something that's very obvious. But what I'm very happy about concerning this arrangement, Art on Art, is that in my process, as you put it, I sometimes make quite elaborate sketches, which I will call a study for the composition. Sometimes those studies are the only thing that are left for me after a painting has a new owner. And when Hussein and I spoke about this arrangement, I decided that I'll use this as the first opportunity to show some of those studies. So at this arrangement, we're going to have some of my studies. Usually some of them are quite elaborate. On the invitation, there's one of them. And you will see the actual work that came out of that.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting. It's just maybe a step in my process towards the final work.
So Hussein and Victor, Art on Art, this is an exhibition that's open for, I think it's from the 29th of November. So that was yesterday, for about a week. The question really is, you're hosting this at the Beyond property, one of the many properties you've done in this country. There's the Iris in Airport, Royal Senchi, Babiasi Valley, just to name three. I mean, then there's, of course, Urbano, Roots Apartment, and so many others. There's a clear appreciation of art, or an expression of art in the architecture. How does the context of Airport residential area, for example, influence what you've done with Beyond?
Okay, so if really you look at Beyond, I mean, closely in the neighborhood where it is fitting, which is really very residential, and then also an area that used to be very green, and the property where we have Beyond also used to be full of trees and so on. So we tried to preserve the residential aspect of the area by having something that has a soft footprint on the location, and also by really doing a lot of efforts in preserving some 50 years old trees in the property, and by also respecting the alignment with the neighbors, neighboring properties, the setbacks, also the setback from the main road. So, and then of course comes, if you look closely to the design itself, the patterns that are on those slabs that makes the building also different and special. So all of this, I mean, give it like it has been here. It's not a new property. It's not a new building. This is how I feel, at least. And this is some of the comments that I heard from some of the people. So like, again, I said before, it's the context, and then it's the people of this neighborhood that I know most of them, and also the weather, and then the culture. Okay. So this is, then I wanted to celebrate this property or this building or this design. And I came to my friend Victor and I proposed the idea of the art exhibition, because I felt that there's nothing more interesting or more valuable than really putting art on art, but most importantly, minds on minds. And if I want to say, heart on heart also, you know, because this is how this environment works. I mean, and this is how I wish it would work. So it's hands on hands, heart on heart, art on art, vision on vision. This is how we can make really a difference and send good messages around us, or try to do that. I don't want to say that we did it. But,
yeah. It's all in the doing. The trying is still in the doing.
Yeah.